the Golden Stallion, the Man of Tomorrow, Savzu, the Rated R Radio Star, baby, you know I'm here for you. Woo! And we've got a little Wednesday Q&A. Don't worry, it won't be like last week where I had to delay by a day. Oh boy. Anyway, before I get into, we're actually straight up, we're going to be talking a lot of crypto here, a lot of cryptocurrency, a lot of Bitcoin, really. And we're going to, we'll kind of get into nitty gritty, on some of it. But anyway, that's coming up. Just a couple things I want to tell the patrons about. First off, I have to give a huge thank you. Not only for being patrons, which I like to thank you for every single week, no matter how much content comes out, really means a lot to me. A lot of people have significantly upped their Patreon donation, and I mean significantly, since last week, and thank you for that. Got a lot of great response from last week's Q&A, where we talked about the LF, we talked about plasma cosmology, we talked about all kinds of things. Now, I did get some responses to that, but I think I might dip into that in another show. Or maybe I'll get to it towards the end of this show. But I want to make sure there's some tech in here. Maybe what I'm probably going to do, I haven't done it yet, but I'm probably going to do another poll, which the last poll that I did on Patreon was fantastic. Like, the ideas that you guys shared with me, the thoughts you shared with me were so valuable. Like, you have no idea. And so maybe I'll do another poll. And what I'm going to ask is that, like, and probably what the poll will be, and maybe I'll put it out tonight. What exactly, what subjects do you enjoy the most during the Q&As? Because if a lot of the patrons, I mean, if you like the tech, that's fine, but I know a lot of people actually, in many ways, like a lot more of what we talk about than the tech, during the Q&As. So I just want to get a gauge as far as what people are really digging. Maybe that way I can also weigh in, because I have so many questions to get to, and please keep the questions coming, because things become appertenant over time, need to come back up. We've talked about this before. But, at least that way I can maybe weigh how many types of what kind of question should be in each show. Like last week when we did Q&A, I made it an entirely, religious and historical and somewhat scientific show. Is that the kind of direction people like? And, we'll do the poll and find out. Another thing that I have to, thank you for that. I just want to let you know that, that's a thing that's coming down. But the thing I really want to thank the patrons for is I had a lot of patrons get in touch with me saying, my conversation on the Q&A episodes where I did get into, really knee deep into philosophy, particularly, Max Stirner's work of egoist anarchism and also hedonism, ethical hedonism. A lot of people said, it's like, boy, everybody needs to hear this. And so since you yourselves said, hey, this should be available to everybody, I made those. What I did is I took and they were from the Q&A episodes 35 and 36, if you're wondering. But I cut those sections out, turned it into one segment, put it on a YouTube video, effectively. With just pictures, like a slideshow style thing. Not that there's nothing interesting in the pictures necessarily. But I put that in, and wow, is this getting a lot of traction. This video that I made and you can go to my YouTube channel, to find that. Just look up Brian Sovereign or type in Brian Sovereign Max Stirner. It'll come up, I'm sure. But on Twitter, it's getting shared around by all different stripes of anarchists and by all different kinds of people. People really, really have been retweeting it, hearting it. It's gotten a fair amount of views, particularly for I don't really do much with my YouTube channel. Other than when I release a video game, I don't generally expect a lot of anything. And what's a lot, right? I think I might have a couple videos that have over 1,000 plays or something, but generally, nothing like that happens. But whatever. Anyway, this has gotten a lot. People are sharing this around. People love it. They really enjoyed the, kind of the way it was put together. In fact, honestly, if I knew it was going to be fairly popular, I probably would have, put in, all I did was just splice the two segments together. I didn't even do any special necessarily intro or something, explaining what exactly was going to go down. I just had to, go waltz right into it. But people are loving it. And in fact, I was reached out to by a fairly popular philosophy podcast, and I only released this video a day ago. So I I'm curious to see just how far it's going to go, with what it can do. Um, but the show's called Hi-Fi, and actually it's going through Relay.fm, which is very, very, very popular. And I mean, we're talking quite a few thousand listeners here, and they have asked me to be on in a future episode, to talk about egoist anarchism and Max Stirner in general. They said they'd never heard anything like it. Like they've never heard anybody actually. Well, so the email was interesting because it broke down into like it was. They were kind of being a little insulting, which is part of the reason I didn't want to share the email overall, like on social media, even though I mentioned on social media that I got reached out to, and I'll explain why it matters to me. But anyway, I mean, they were pretty much saying that, look, a lot of egoist anarchists are just like, it seems like just a bunch of reactionary children. Like that's sort of the point that they made. And you know what? Like, I kind of agree. Like, a lot of people, they don't really take it seriously. They're all just like, oh yeah, give me my AK-47 and I'm going to go, do this. When, well, like I said, when I talked about it on the Patreon Q&A episode, look, we're going to get into tech in just a minute. Don't worry. Okay. But I said, look, I don't think most people that say they're fans of Stirner or they want to claim to be egoists or something, they've never read the second half of the fucking book. I mean, hell, I don't think they even read the first page, I wonder sometimes. Because in the first page, Stirner dedicates it to his wife, to his sweetheart. Like, if you don't get that you're supposed to, like, love and kind of respect people, I don't know what the fuck you just missed out of that book. So, whatever. Anyway, not going there. So, I really appreciated getting asked to be on this show in the first place. Okay, like, just being asked, and normally I don't talk about these things much until, like, I'm actually on the shows, which is, I mean, like, I don't talk about what I'm doing whenever I'm working with School Sucks, or if I'm going to be on, with Ernie, on Declare Your Independence, or whatever show I ended up, the crypto show or something. They'll ask me a couple weeks in advance, or if not, more, and I don't really talk about it until I do it, or I mention when I know, what's going to be going down and what dates and everything. So, but I mentioned this one. I bring this up because me personally, you can't imagine over the years, be it when I was on Free Talk Live for 2 years, be it in things I've brought up on Sovereign Tech, be it things I've said on social media, whatever. People just have you have no fucking idea how often I get told I don't know anything about philosophy, I don't know anything about anarchism, how I get completely left out. Look, I'm not boasting, okay? I have one of the most downloaded, one of the most popular, you could say liberty-based shows, even though I know it's popular because it appeals to a much broader audience. But I have one of the most popular fucking podcasts, in this whole ideological scheme out there. And no one ever, invites me to the table to talk about anything other than tech. Granted, I'm known, for talking about tech, and I certainly get plenty of respect for that, and I appreciate it. Okay, but there's a big ethical underpinning, which, from what I hear from my listeners, is one of the main things they love about the show. Never get asked to talk about that shit. Never. And that's fine. Like, you don't have to have me, on your show to talk about it, or at your event, or whatever. Or even, I mean, it's not even that. Like, honestly, and you could say, look, well, feel about it however you feel about what I'm saying, okay? But even, like, if it's somewhere and people are just kind of hanging out, like, I mean, they almost try to, like, push me out of the conversation. It seems it is so goddamn annoying and insulting. So anyway, now I'm going to be on a show that gets, just really a massive audience, and frankly, like, I kind of want to brag about it. Because I want to be like, well, guess what, fuckers? You didn't want Rudolph playing in the reindeer games? Well, now get Donner and Blitzen. You don't know what's coming, because now I'm in the reindeer game, baby. Woo! Oh, man. For years. So, whatever. I mean, some people show me, kind of show the respect. And I'm not saying you have to. I'm just saying that, like, it gets so goddamn annoying. It really does. It really gets under my skin, how like, yeah, the ways that I get ignored. But whatever. Am I bitter? Not really. So, but none of that would have happened if you, the patrons, the executive producers, effectively, of Sovereign Tech, didn't come out and say, hey, you should really release this out in the open. We think people need to hear this stuff. And you were right. You were absolutely right. And so I put it out there, and whoo, look where it's going. So, and of course, the end result that I really want, I mean, hey, if people get into anarchism, great. But the end result, that I would really love is if more people, get on board with Sovereign Tech and start taking what's been being said on that show for years seriously. Because we do live in my opinion, we live in very dangerous times. Have we always? Sure, there's governments. But these days are particularly interesting. Particularly more so dangerous, I think, and we'll be talking about that actually this week on the upcoming episode of Sovereign Tech, because there's some updates on things that we were talking about a couple weeks ago that seem to now be reality, and we're going to break a lot of that down, and of course do the due diligence in doing so by verifying what gets said within any of this news that gets reported. So anyway, all right, enough of that. Thank you. Hope that that little spiel I just went on didn't turn anybody off. If it did, you can let me know, because I actually listen to people, and I take critiques very well, unlike some others. So okay, let's get into a couple of Bitcoin questions here, and then we're going to get into some other interesting questions to get into. And I am going to do an album of the week for you here, as I said I would probably do that from now on, but we'll get into that after we get to the tech. So here we go. Anyway, reading from this, because this is a couple parts of a message that was sent to me through Patreon. Anyway, my question is, what are your thoughts on the Bitcoin scaling debate? I know you don't really like to talk about Bitcoin, but I'd really love to hear your thoughts on the topic, specifically BU, which I'm guessing is Blockchain Unlimited, or Bitcoin Unlimited, SegWit, and Blockstream. Okay, so that's the question. Okay, so I don't have, my actual response to this is a very simple one. It's really not technical at all. So my thoughts on, particularly with SegWit, which is kind of a popular subject to come up. Blockstream, I'm guessing you're talking more about side chains, and all of this. So I can comment on those two certainly. I have some thoughts on it. But then I do have a thought on the scaling debate as a whole. But again, it's really not a technical response. It's more of a philosophical one. So to talk about SegWit and Blockstream, let's break into that a bit. Blockstream in particular, or the idea of sidechains themselves, I have talked about them on Sovereign Tech in the past. I'm still, and my answer is kind of the same that it's always been. I'm still not 100% sold on how exactly you secure the gateway between a sidechain and the main Bitcoin blockchain itself. That really seems like a very scary point of failure. And this is going to get into SegWit. This will actually kind of parlay into SegWit very nicely. Because how does that, what happens at that point, where the sidechain, kind of re-enters, okay, when whatever happens. Now, sidechains, if you don't know, is the idea that using the security of the network effect of the Bitcoin blockchain, you can do other interesting things without affecting Bitcoin and without really having to necessarily to add to Bitcoin, other than the ability to handle the exit and entrance of a sidechain, of information from a sidechain. That you can have, you can do all kinds of things. You could do smart property. You could do certain kinds of smart contracts, and you got to be very careful when you use the word smart contracts. You can do all these, all kinds of wild different things. And so One of the problems is again, how do you verify exactly, when that comes back in, like when whatever you're doing on a site, say your side chain is for, I don't know, some kind of like housing registry or something that you put onto, that some kind of registry that runs on its own side chain and then goes back into Bitcoin. How exactly, do you, how do you secure that when it comes in? How do you know that all the confirmed transactions that happen within that sidechain, that when they go to the Bitcoin blockchain, that it's all going to match up and everything's perfect, without there being some kind of, perhaps some kind of injection attack at the gateway when all that information gets put into the Bitcoin blockchain. That's been my number one concern. I've yet to hear a really good answer to that, and maybe there's not one to have right now, because right now they're still figuring out how do we even do this, right? And I know, and I've talked to guys, from well, I'll just say a certain company that said they've got it licked. And I've always said that, yes, Bitcoin has some of the best developers in the world going for it. It really does. So I'm not saying that they, whether it's the Bitcoin core team or a Bitcoin company, so I'm not saying they can't figure it out, but there it is. I mean, I'm more intrigued, and I want to talk about SegWit because it relates. I'm honestly, like, to do the things that people want to talk about with side chains, like, unless the side chain is specifically about making a more anonymous Bitcoin, like I don't see what exactly a sidechain needs or could do that just doing the colored coin implementation on Bitcoin, which is an ages old idea as far as Bitcoin goes. Why you can't just do that? Where, again, it's colored coins where, you label a certain, hash with that this represents, say, smart property. This represents my car instead of it representing money, right? Like Bitcoin. I don't know why, it's such a simple solution, just fucking do that. But, there's money to be made in doing sidechains, so that's why they're going and doing sidechains. Whether or not it's the best idea or the most practical, that's a whole other conversation. Now, as far as, like, what if they did a sidechain that allowed for Bitcoin transactions to be more anonymous? Sure, but we still have the problem of, okay, but what happens at the gateway? Kind of like with Tor nodes, right? Like imagine it being like Tor. Okay, great. Tor is anonymized from the internet, but the problem is that can you de-anonymize at either the point of exit or point of entry? And, there's a lot of evidence that at least at certain points, I mean, granted Tor keeps getting updated, but that was, that's been very possible to know who exactly was doing what on Tor at the exit node. So is that how it's going to work out with these side chains in Bitcoin? And yeah, I'm not convinced that it isn't. So I like the idea of an implementation like Zcash, which, by the way, I'm still just finishing up some testing on it, but you should be able to donate Zcash to Sovereign Tech starting this week, starting with the upcoming episode of Sovereign Tech. What are we up to? Episode 213 or 214? I think 213. But anyway, you should be able, I'll put it in the show notes. There will be the address for shielded Zcash transactions, so nobody knows who the hell what came from where. And I'm really, really excited to finally have that be a possibility. But I'll talk about that more on Sovereign Tech when we get to it. So anyway, yeah. So Zcash, I mean, like, that's the thing. Okay, Bitcoin is not going to be, and this is the other thing too. With Bitcoin, like I've said on Sovereign Tech before, there are so many companies working to deconstruct and de-anonymize what happens on the Bitcoin blockchain. I mean, they're the bad guys, and they're like, they have such an eye on it that I'm very concerned about the potential for Bitcoin to be able to be as anonymous as really I think it needs to be to make it a lot more worth, or to make it like really, really worthwhile. I mean, Bitcoin's worthwhile. Don't misunderstand me. I love Bitcoin. It's worthwhile just in the fact that it's not government issued. Like, that's enough reason to use it. Okay, but as I've said for a long time, the thing that could actually quote unquote unseat or dethrone Bitcoin is the thing that could be more anonymous, because that's what's really needed, especially right now in the present political climate that we're under. So anyway, I'm not convinced that Bitcoin can ever be that right now. I'm just my mind could change. Somebody could develop something amazing, but we'll see. Now, as far as segregated witness, now this is a contentious subject, and the idea pretty much is what you have in effectively a Bitcoin transaction. Okay, is you have signatures that, kind of the hash, that verifies, this is what would be called witness data. Okay, that verifies, that all the information that happens within the transaction. Okay, now there's a small little problem with this. Okay, so what SegWit will do actually kind of skips needing the signatures. Okay, for the transaction ID, and this is, well, I don't know how technical we want to get, but I mean, it's a tech show, I know. But anyway, like the idea is that this, with SegWit, you will end up skipping the need, to check all those signatures for the transaction ID. Now, this has a twofold advantage, or at least two. I mean, there's probably a lot more, but to my mind, there's two advantages to this. One is that transaction ID is kind of malleable. Like you can, there's a chance that you could sort of forge what's happening there. Okay, this is somewhat similar to what we were talking about, where if you had sidechains and you gateway back into the blockchain, right? Okay, so it can solve that. It can solve the malleability issues with the transaction ID. Also, this can solve, which is one of the questions that was asked in the original question here for the Q&A from the patron. It solves kind of the issue of scalability, to where if you're not having to constantly like put forward all of that data effectively with the blockchain. Okay, like that you could just verify very quickly based upon witness data from other things. Okay, this is like kind of like a Merkle tree for hashes. Okay, and we've talked about that before with Monero, how there was a Merkle tree attack that allowed for double spends and all this. That was a few Q&As ago. So with SegWit, you skip all that, and so you don't need as much data being sent with each transaction, and there's advantages to this, and I get it. A lot of people think that it is mainly required for the Lightning Network, which then the Lightning Network. Well, this is a whole other subject in itself, but it's kind of the same basic premise, to where what you have with the Lightning Network, like you have what's called payment channels, okay, and there's these various signatures, and the problem is that to do the idea of payment channels, where it kind of works like a Merkle tree, like we were just describing, where effectively you could take data from, I don't know, from Roger to Jeff to whoever, and like they could all confirm sort of each other's without having to send every single bit of of hashing signatures and all this as you go along, because that takes time. That requires a lot more data. With the Lightning Network, part of the problem is like, say, opening a payment channel would take possibly 10 minutes. Now, if you implement SegWit with the Lightning Network, then you could a lot quicker verify everything, because you're not looking for all the signatures for the transaction ID. Okay, so there's huge problems with the Lightning Network as well that people have. There's problems it's trying to solve that I think are kind of exciting. Like the Lightning Network could solve one of the major problems I've had with Bitcoin for a while, which is it doesn't do well offline. Like you really kind of have to have a data connection, as to where I think it would behoove the Bitcoin developers to come up with something that allows you to transact offline for a very a certain period of time, and then eventually obviously you're going to have to reconnect. But so anyway, Lightning Network could kind of solve that. Now understand, SegWit was developed by the Bitcoin Core team. It's not like it's just some third party thing. It's not like sidechains, where it's sort of kind of no pun intended, off to the side. But SegWit can be a thing without without needing the Lightning Network whatsoever. So even if you have a problem with a lot of the implementations that people are describing with the Lightning Network, you can still use SegWit. It's really and I think there's still advantages to be had with it. People do have some issues with it, and all right. So anyway, to answer the question very simply, this is the thing: is I don't necessarily have a huge like. There's not. I mean, I can come up with technical responses to a lot of this stuff, but my main point is a philosophical one. And I know not a lot of people, agree with me on this, and that's fine. It's my opinion. It's what it's what I'm shooting for here. And my main answer to all this is that look, Bitcoin's just not for everybody because all of these different technologies they're really what they're about is not necessarily like, I mean, yes, it's about scalability in the abstract scalability as in more people getting to use Bitcoin and because we have to speed up those transaction times. We can't be waiting 10 minutes for this or that. And people are feeling it right now as to where Bitcoin transactions are taking a good amount of time, and I understand that. But and I mean, this is, do we increase the block sizes? Do we go to this? Do we go to 20 meg? What do we go to? How does all this shit work, right? And my response has pretty much always been the same. It's been the same for years. And that is, Bitcoin's really not for everybody. Like, I don't need Bitcoin to grow. The people that need to use Bitcoin have already been using it, frankly, for years. The people that Bitcoin's for have already been using it for years. Now, I know some people, speculators, whatever else, may not like to hear that because, without growth in the Bitcoin ecosystem itself, it's not going to go up in value, or at least that's the idea. I mean, other factors, more complex factors would have to be achieved or come to fruition to allow the Bitcoin price to go up, as to where growth alone could kind of, with a commodity or with money, it could kind of, that's impetus enough generally, for there to be an increase in price. So people don't like to hear this, and that's the thing. Like, do you come from, and I guess this is the biggest question, is that, and you can come from both, certainly, you don't have to choose just one, but do you look at Bitcoin from a utilitarian standpoint, or do you look at it from a speculative standpoint, like from a valuation standpoint? I'm on the side of the utilitarian standpoint. I mean, I don't mind if it goes up in price. Great. Why would I have an issue with that? Go ahead. I don't care. Okay. But my number one concern is having money that anybody can use when they need it, regardless of, what kind of culture or political climate that they live in. There. That's it. That's all I care about. Is having that ability, having System D or the shadow economy, whatever, be able to function because it needs to, have black markets be able to function because they need to, and stop vilifying what black markets are. And it just needs to be there for that. It needs, it doesn't, I've said this a million times, grandma doesn't need Bitcoin. I don't even want grandma to use Bitcoin. Grandma can use PayPal. She doesn't get it. She doesn't understand why Bitcoin needs to be a thing. They don't. So, I'm kind of against the growth of Bitcoin. like I don't want more users. It's not needed. They don't need it. They don't want it. They don't understand, and they're never going to understand. Why exactly? I mean, yes, there have been cases, and there's times where I was really excited about it, and I mean, I'm still excited about Bitcoin. Please don't misunderstand me, okay? But there is, how to put this? Yeah, I've been at like meetings back when Bitcoin meetups were kind of the new hotness. This would be 2013, 2012 maybe. You'd get people that would come to a Bitcoin meeting and they would like come to the realization, holy shit, we don't need the Federal Reserve. Now, that's great. I'm glad that people get into liberty or even anarchism or whatever. They start their path because of Bitcoin. Fucking awesome. I think that's wonderful. Okay, but the problem is that the reason that they get to liberty isn't because, oh, look at this Bitcoin thing. Wow, okay, no, I don't need banks anymore, blah, blah, blah. That's not what happens. What happens is that these are people that understand the technology, and then the light goes off and says, wait, we don't need banks. We don't need, we don't need governments. We don't need the Federal Reserve. We don't, whatever path they end up going. But it's because they understand the technology. The problem is that with the growth of Bitcoin, it has nothing to do with getting more people to understand the technology. It just has to do with more people using Bitcoin. But for them to come to the realizations, the positive realizations and correlations that come out of using Bitcoin, okay, they're not going to get it just because they start using Bitcoin. They have to know how it works. That way they know what it really means. And that's not part of the growth trajectory that all of these companies and a lot of these new developments are putting under consideration when they want Bitcoin to scale and when they want it to grow more. So it doesn't excite me. It doesn't mean anything to me. I don't need anybody else using Bitcoin. Okay, the people that know how to use it, the people that are excited about it, the people that get it, okay, they use it. I mean, I mentioned Zcash earlier. One of the, and this is kind of an opinion that goes around, but there's the opinion, and maybe it's the reality, that not a lot of people are using Zcash in a shielded form. Now, part of the reason is that it's a pain in the ass to set up a full Zcash node that can use, encrypted, shielded transactions, right? Okay, as to where, a lot of people would probably accept transparent Zcash, like through using the Jax wallet or something like this, which already accepts Zcash. But they're not using the shielded because people don't understand why that's necessary. Do you see what I mean? You can give them the most incredible technology in the world, but they won't, which I think zero knowledge proofs is fucking awesome, okay? But they won't use it if they don't know why. Like they won't get it. They won't be passionate about it to why they want to talk about things. I mean, Bitcoin grew at first because, honestly, it grew in a Liberty crowd. I know that. I can prove that. It did not grow up in Silicon Valley. It grew up in liberty circles, in anarchist circles. Okay, because they understood the barriers that it broke. They understood that the middlemen it got rid of. They understand the institutions that it could get rid of, and all this. That's what's cool about Bitcoin. But all of the scaling conversation has nothing to do with any of that. Has fucking nothing to do with that. And believe me, again, if you make Bitcoin work like magic, then guess what? People will just think it's magic, and they'll keep on with all the rest of their fucking magical thinking too, because they'll just keep thinking, oh yes, governments are a wonderful thing. Oh, I love the bank. Oh. I mean, like, that's how it's going to go. So I don't care if Bitcoin scales, because the scaling conversation has nothing to do with what makes Bitcoin great. So that's my thoughts on all that. There you go. Like I said, it's a philosophical one. It's not really a tech it's not really a tech angle. But anyway, so yeah, but I mean, as far as like, do I have issues with some of these side chains? I'm skeptical. SegWit, yeah, I'm pretty much on board with that. Lightning Network, yeah, not as much as I'm on board, say, necessarily with SegWit. I know there's a lot of issues. I mean, you could barely cover them all. You go to our Bitcoin on Reddit and, your head will fucking spin, right? But there you go. Anyway, so I hope that answered that, and pretty good. We we answered that inside of like 32 minutes. And I'm gonna get to another Bitcoin question here in just a second. So yeah, let's just do it. So the question is, just wondering if you have any insights or thoughts on BitSquare. I'm looking for a more anonymous way to purchase Bitcoin, and it seems good on the surface, but I'm just not sure just how private, secure, and or easy it is to actually use. If you don't have any experience with BitSquare, do you have any other online options, or maybe even using a Bitcoin ATM? I've thought about local Bitcoins, but haven't gotten over the hump of it seeming a little too sketchy. Okay. So, yeah, okay, I haven't used BitSquare, which you can find. It's bitsquare.io is where you can go for this. And, the idea itself is, in my opinion, very well done. This idea of a decentralized peer-to-peer exchange that, I mean, again, totally open source. It all gets run. I mean, picture it being like a Bitcoin. It's like the OpenBazaar version of a Bitcoin exchange. That's kind of the premise. And it's been around. I think like 2014 they started working on it. It's been a little while. I've seen it in action. I've never really used it much myself. So I don't really see any actual problem with it. And like, if the only reason that maybe it's not more well known might just really come down to marketing, like that their marketing wasn't exactly top notch, but it's still a thing, still very much used, and I think it's a great idea, and the implementation just gets more and more solid. So and it is hard to set up though. Like, I mean, yeah, you can. There's a one-click installer effectively, and you set up all your accounts within it, but it can be. It's certainly not as like point and click as like say a Coinbase or something. It's definitely not at that level. So I don't really have any major issues with Bitsquare.io. It is not my preferred way to go, just because I don't. Part of me doesn't really like putting all of that information into software, especially if my idea is like kind of the idea with. I mean, the beauty like so Bitsquare is completely decentralized, right? Like there is no central point. There's no website. There's no central point of failure, really. I mean, you can go to a website to download the software, but you don't really have anywhere like there's no website that you go to that you interact with everybody else. It's literally peer-to-peer software, which is really cool. You know, but there's a part of me that just feels a little skittish. I mean, with the amount of information that you can put in there, and you don't have to put all of it, certainly, but yeah, it just doesn't meet my needs if I'm looking for a more anonymous way to go. You mentioned the other two that I kind of recommend, and local Bitcoins. Granted, haven't messed with local Bitcoins in a while. I'll just put it that way. But at the time, and let's be clear here, the Bitcoin's user base was significantly smaller at that time. Like it worked. I mean, it really worked. And I still honestly I still think it works, and it's probably one of the best systems out there to where it's just yep, good old fashioned human handshakes effectively. You're meeting person to person, and and you do the deed, and you don't really honestly like I haven't over the years, even up until recently, like I haven't heard that many horror stories, and some of them I have a hard time believing too that they're actually like a thing. Like I almost you got to wonder sometimes with a little, perhaps what's the word I'm looking for? I guess for lack of a better term, a little industrial espionage, or a little economic hit jobs, where I could see Coinbase or some others like posting some scary stories about local Bitcoins that maybe never really happened just to try and get people into Coinbase. Especially a couple of years ago, I could certainly see that where not everybody was relying on Coinbase yet. So local Bitcoins I'm a big fan of. Bitcoin ATMs, like ones from Lamasu, I know those guys. They're wonderful. There's a great business model there. These are just a great thing. These Bitcoin ATMs are phenomenal. It's easy to find them. There's great locator services for these. There's one actually in Keene, New Hampshire, which is very famous and very popular. And I mean, you could get into the issue of say where the Bitcoin ATM is, there could be a camera pointing down at me, blah blah blah. Well, wear your hat and shades. I mean. But I think that's a great way to go. Another thing that is really, I mean, it depends on what your buying habits are. But I think another great thing to do is actually at like Bitcoin meetups. This is really the number one way to do it. If you want Bitcoin, you go to a Bitcoin meetup, at some bar or something, you are guaranteed that there's going to be somebody there willing to sell and, do a great transaction. Or at events, I've been at events where like one of the easiest ways to get, say, currency for another country is you can go to another country, even, I don't know, take your pick, Mexico, or, wherever you go, or somewhere in Europe, and you go there and you go to a Bitcoin or a blockchain convention of some kind or conference. Guaranteed somebody there is going to sell you and there's guys like there's local dudes, and I mean not guys in suits either. And it's not, I've had great interactions this way where, okay, yeah, I'll sell you the Bitcoin and I'll give you, the local currency, right? At a good exchange rate usually too. So that's a beautiful way to do it. This person-to-person thing, like this is so, and that kind of includes Bitcoin ATMs. This is so the way to do it right, and this is really the way that so much crypto needs to be done. And I don't just mean cryptocurrencies. I mean crypto in general. Getting back to key parties, verifying signal numbers to each other, and all this stuff. I mean, like that's so the way to do shit. So that's what I recommend. Bitsquare, again, I don't really have any major issues, with it. It's not something I use. If I have to, I kind of go the other routes. And of course, maybe the easiest way of them all is for whatever work you do, if you're able to do this. Of course, not everybody is, and that's totally fine. But like for the work you do, if you recommend getting paid in Bitcoin, usually companies are more willing to deal with Coinbase, and then you get the Bitcoin to you. And if you want it like to be somehow, quasi-anonymous or something, as far as that goes, as to like what account it goes to or something, that's something you solve kind of at the wallet level as much as you can. So anyway, that's not the most anonymous route, getting paid for it, obviously, but that's another easy way, obviously, to get Bitcoin. But the most anonymous routes are, in my opinion, like be at Bitcoin conferences, Bitcoin meetups, or hit up the Bitcoin ATMs, or really local Bitcoins is still a totally valid option. In my opinion. So there you go. We talked up some tech. We got into some Bitcoin. We went knee deep. I hope that answered your questions. If you wanted me to go, deeper tech-wise, just ask that more specifically. If you want me to like really do, because like I've had some people ask great questions. Could you break down LavaBit's new email systems? Like Dime and Magma. Could you break down the types of SSL? These are great questions, and I will get to these. In fact, I might even do them for main Sovereign Tech episodes, because I do want people to get educated and understand how all this stuff works, and it's very important. So, but if people aren't wanting the deep dive and they're wanting more of a 40-foot view, which seems to be mostly what people want with Sovereign Tech, that's what I want to give. So anyway, there you go. Let's get into another question here. Actually, since we're here, let's get into the album pick of the week, shall we? And then we will get into another question, which is a very interesting hybrid of a question that is kind of tech related. So, okay, so album pick of this week is going to be a bit of a harder one to find. You can buy it, certainly, but you may not have the easiest time getting it on the torrents. And I actually buy from the... Okay, so the band is W.E.T, and that's an acronym, W.E.T. Okay. And it's representative of, the main guys in the band. So W.E.T, and the album, they have two albums. It's kind of a super group, okay? And the main person that gets me excited about it is actually the lead singer, which is Jeff Scott Soto, who I am a huge fan of. Have had the pleasure of actually hanging with a few times. Just a dynamite human being, and one of the hardest working guys in rock. Rock and heavy metal. Some people make that delineation, hard rock, heavy metal. I always just call it all metal. But anyway, this is definitely a hard rock album, far more melodic than, it's not the heaviest stuff in the world, but Rise Up, and it is in my opinion, it is a track for track album. Everything, right from the title track, Rise Up, is fantastic. The first track, Walk Away, is phenomenal. Still Unbroken, the last song on it is fantastic. I mean, and there's a lot of good ballads on it. Jeff Scott Soto, for those that don't know, now he's been around forever. He's done work with Yngwie Malmsteen, one of the greatest guitarists of all time. He's fronted so many different bands over the years. He does his own solo work, which is really good. He has his own band right now that is 2 albums deep, and actually their third one's coming out soon. In fact, they already released the first single off of their third one, which I think it's just going to be a self-titled album, Soto. And it the cover song that they did is one of my favorite, if not my favorite, Michael Jackson song of all time, which is Given to Me off of the album Dangerous. Which Dangerous, this is something I was actually kind of realizing this week as I was, I was in a music mood this week as compared to listening to a lot of podcasts. Just because I think I was so fucking busy. And like the second disc for Michael Jackson, the second disc of History, his greatest hits album, the second disc is all original music. Well, I mean, there's a cover song of the Beatles' Come Together, which is probably the best version of that ever. It's even better than the Aerosmith one. But I think that second disc of History might be his best album. Each one of those songs just fucking sticks to you like glue. I mean, it's like saran wrap on turkey, baby. I mean, A Stranger in Moscow, They Don't Really Care About Us, even, Scream, the duet he did with his sister Janet, Don Sheldon, or is it DS? I think the song was just called DS, but and I don't know what the fuck the song's about, but Don Sheldon is a cold man, whatever the fuck that means. Money, the song History itself, Too Bad, and that's number 2 in bad. Like, all of those songs are so good. That is such an underrated album, and even its sister album, which was Blood on the Dance Floor, which had 4 original tracks which are 4 awesome original tracks. Ghost, Morphine, Superfly, is it Superfly Sista? And not Threatened, that's off of Invincible. Shit. Anyway, the fourth song on there is really good too, and then of course the song "Blood on the Dance Floor" is incredible. But the rest of the album, "Blood on the Dance Floor," is all remixes of songs from History Disc 2, and they're all good too. I mean, it's really great. But boy, that album's good. But anyway, but Dangerous is 93's Dangerous is probably still my favorite Michael Jackson album. It is so intense. There's such a wide range of songs on there, and once again, track for track. But yeah, anyway, so Soto did a cover of "Give In To Me," and it is so hard rocking. That song already, "Give In To Me," had Slash on guitars in the original version on Dangerous, so it's already a great rocker. But Soto just took it to that next level, that I think it really deserves. Just awesome. So anyway, Soto's work is really good. Jeff Scott Soto's work on its own is great. His last album that came out was Divac, and that's another track for track, just really really good. Anything that Soto releases, I buy. Doesn't matter if I can torrent it. I buy it in a heartbeat. I keep such close track. I love that guy. I could probably get him on Sovereign Tech if I thought, and I was kind of testing this week when I had Tatiana on, Tatiana Moroz, who I just love as well. And some of you have said that you jumped in on her whole Tatiana Coin campaign at TatianaCoin.com. Thank you for doing that. And if you haven't already, please do. I think she's really doing something amazing that could actually help fund guys like Jeff Scott Soto, quite frankly. So, please do this. We need more metal. We really, really do. But, so anyway, anytime Jeff Scott Soto, I was testing, sorry, this is what I was saying. I was testing on Sovereign Tech this week. How do people feel about having musicians on the show? Largely, the response has been great. Granted, it had a tech angle to it as well. But, I'd love to interview some of these really hard rocking musicians, and because some of these guys have a lot to say about technology, about the technology in music, what they use, how things have changed, on the stage scene and everything that technology has done for that. So I mean, I can definitely come at it from a tech angle, but I'd love to get these guys on there because I just love to give them fucking press. Like I get ticked off when some of these guys that some of these guys are they're jukebox heroes, to quote Foreigner, who I'm also a big fan of. But, to quote that, like, these are jukebox heroes, and, like, I have a bigger audience than they do. And I'm like, what the fuck? That ain't right. And so I'd love to give them some press. But anyway, so W.E.T, Rise Up, and it's W, period, E, period, T, period. And then the album is Rise Up. They had a first album nowhere near as good as Rise Up. Rise Up is just fucking amazing. So that's album of the week. And you're going to love every track on there. I mean, it's just a really intense, great one to work out to as well. Very, very good. And if you want to, check out everything by Jeff Scott Soto. He had the first album that they came. I think it was Not Into the Void. I think that's an Ace Frehley album. Anyway, he had his first album. The second album, Divac, is awesome. So there's a lot to look in there. Once you break into the world of Jeff Scott Soto, you've got so much to check out. He's really, like, as a singer, he's kind of a hired gun, but he's he's somewhat successful as a hired gun. At least he makes a living because he has that much talent, and he's been around. He's been around for a few years. So there you go. There's your album pick of the week, W.E.T, and the album is Rise Up. Okay. So now I'm going to get into another question here, and then we'll wrap it up. And this question, of course, is from a patron because we only do patron questions here. And it's actually from, somewhat of a celebrity, shall we say. A guy he said I can say his name, otherwise I never reveal who the people are that ask these questions unless you want me to, and I'm happy to do so. But and he didn't mention any of this. I just happen to know. But from Jim Jesus, and Jim Jesus, of course, if that's his real name, is also, he's a freedom fiend with, Michael Dean's Freedom Fiends. Anyway, I really appreciate the fact that he's a patron. That means the world to me. So I'm going to read his question here. It's got a bit of length to it, but it matters. So, hey Brian, I saw that you recently picked up a Netflix subscription, and it seems like you were supporting the Dear White People project. Don't know if that's true, but that was the impression I got. Okay, I'm going to stop right there. There's more to read. I'm going to stop right there. So on social media, I mentioned this week that, or I think it was like maybe Saturday morning or something, that yes, I ordered a Netflix account, and yes, I did. Now, I've been very much against Netflix for years because I don't like their streaming model. I think that they create a faux scarcity in that they don't renew the contracts with a lot of like with studios and whatever other kind of distribution houses, that there's no way that Netflix can't get for whatever price they want. Because it's not, seriously, they're not fucking selling it off to Amazon. I mean, yeah, Amazon's kind of a competitor. There's Hulu and all this, but I don't think there's that much price competition. And obviously, it would behoove Netflix to, if say there was a thing that there was this competition for contracts as to what TV shows and movies and whatever that you could play on Netflix, right? Say that was a thing. It would behoove them to buy out and continually buy out all those contracts. That way, and in fact make the contracts more draconian. I'm not saying that's good for the consumer. I'm saying it's good for Netflix. Okay, I'm not saying this is what I would do, personally, ethically, but I'm just saying that this is what Netflix, should do if they were trying to do good business here. Okay, or if they're trying to be, the juggernaut that they sort of already are. They would, it would behoove them to have all of that content available, there, so that way nobody goes to the other guys. And that would also help them out with their own, their independent content that they fund or that they purchase, because like some of the Netflix original content isn't actually Netflix original. They just bought the airing rights for it, and no other, at least in America, no other venue can play it. It's not like it's an older show or something. It's new content, but it's not necessarily original to them. So, and there's a lot of cases of that. Black Mirror, some others, I'm not season 3. I'm not going to get into all that. Anyway, so and frankly, okay, and I'll address kind of more of Jim's point here in a second. Frankly, I have been, since I ordered Netflix, and he's right. I did do it for Dear White People. And before you turn off, let me explain why. But I tried using it for other things. It's like, oh, this is nice. I won't have to take the time to, kind of transfer from my hard drive to watch a movie, say on the TV screen and all this stuff. But everything I tried to look up on Netflix, it doesn't have. And I know I had a Netflix account years ago, especially with the DVD thing. I mean, that's a whole other story in itself that I could tell. That was a lot of fun back in those days. But anyway, I remember when Netflix started streaming, you used to be able to watch every episode of Stargate SG-1. And at that time, and we're talking 2011 or something, right? To have the entire Stargate collection, I mean, you had to have a separate fucking shelf for all of those DVDs. Or even if it was Blu-rays, because it was a lot. We're talking 10 seasons. Then you got 5 seasons of Atlantis. Then you had Stargate Universe. And then you had was it Stargate Infinity? Was that the animated one? I mean, you had to have so much. And I was like, oh, this makes a ton of sense. This is actually pretty practical. So I was actually kind of excited at the fact that, oh, great, I'll get a Netflix account. And well, I guess one of the bonuses is that I won't have to carry around a hard drive with me anymore anytime I want to watch Stargate. But guess what? They don't have Stargate anymore. And what, really? They couldn't afford to have Stargate on their fucking that's horseshit. So they create this false they create this false scarcity. They pay companies like Gawker or Univision now, right? But they pay whatever. All these different websites to, hey, let everybody know what movies are disappearing this month. That way they all go and watch it. And this way we can get metrics to gauge, exactly which ones, to pay contracts for and all this stuff. And, or what kind of content people are looking for and everything. And I'm not saying that's not an interesting business model. I'm just saying that I think it's very anti-consumer. That's horseshit when really it's pennies. It's really pennies to keep a lot of the stuff in their feed. And yes, it is. I know. So I hate Netflix's model, but anyway. So the other thing, and like Stephanie and I yesterday for Valentine's Day, I was like, oh, here's the greatest Valentine's Day movie ever, Cruel Intentions. Let's watch it. We got Netflix. Let's do it. Nope, they didn't have it. Cruel Intentions. How old's that fucking movie? Or then she said somebody recommended to her, and I actually enjoy this film. Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead. Classic '90s film. The movie's got to be shy of 30 years old. I mean, it is so fucking old. It has Kelly from Married with Children in it, right? Go look it up. Oh, no, they don't have it. Like everything we're looking up, they didn't have. And I was like, holy shit. I'm like, who gets excited about this? It has to be only for the original content that people want a part of it. And I mean, and that's the only thing I can guess because, I mean, yeah, it's great. They had all the Star Treks and everything. That's cool. Apparently they're losing Star Wars, however the hell that works. Well, I know how it works. I'm making a point. So, like, frankly, Netflix sucks. Like it really, like I still think it kind of sucks, just because the availability thing is just it's a scam, or it's a sham if anything. So all right, so to the original content, which yeah, I love Voltron. That's definitely the best thing they've got going on. I'm intrigued by what they're going to do with Lost in Space in the coming year. I enjoyed Marco Polo, even though originally that was a Starz show. Obviously, I'm very happy that season 3 of Black Mirror exists. I mean, so that, there's some stuff that okay, nice. I'm glad that's out there. But yeah, like as far as anything outside of those things, I was summarily unimpressed. So, okay, why did I get a Netflix account in the first place? Well, I got it because I saw the outrage from people, even in my own little Liberty circles, saying, I'm canceling my Netflix account. I can't believe they're making this show, Dear White People. This is, God damn it. They're trying to get rid of the white man and or reverse racism. I don't whatever the fucking claims were. Okay, bottom line, there was a big outrage about it. And so, look, folks, understand this about me, okay? Like, I'm above doing a whole lot of things. A whole lot of things. I am not above doing things just to piss people off. I have no problem with doing all kinds of things. From no ethical, logical standpoint whatsoever, I just do it because I don't like that guy and I want to piss him off. I'll do that. Seriously. I mean, maybe... honestly, my propensity for derogation, this is a finely honed skill, a treasured one at that I have. Maybe that'll shock some people to think that I could be like that, but I am. And I'm so pissed off at all this alt-right shit. Like you cannot imagine how much it ticks me off. Especially, and it gets worse, right? Because anytime I complain about the alt-right, usually I'll get people, because they think I'm, and generally I am a very reasonable person, and they say, yeah, but not all alt-righters are like that. Okay, sure, I imagine that's true, that not all alt-righters are like that. But then those very same people will turn around and make some post about SJWs. And then, but I guarantee if you said, look, not all SJWs are like that, you'd get crickets or screams. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Oh, yeah, every SJW is like that. It's like, wait a minute. Whoa. So it gets worse. Like, the fact that there's even a defense, for the alt-right and all this. But whatever, okay? So, yeah, I made that post absolutely, in many ways to tick people off. Now, I've seen the movie Dear White People already that came out in 2014. We'll get into that in the rest of this question. But I just wanted to verify that, yes, I absolutely did order Netflix. I may never even watch the miniseries of Dear White People. I just really, really wanted to put out the message there that, fuck you to all these people that were getting all hot and bothered about this. Now, I have a lot more to say on that, but I'm going to save it. I want to read the rest of the question. Okay? Because it's not just that cut and dry. Like, this is a real problem. All right, of people like this. Boycotting is a very, logical solution to do for a lot of things, but there's something to be said for kind of, like the press that gets had by, some alt-right fucks coming out and saying, I'm canceling my Netflix subscription because they're making a TV show. So let me read on more. When I originally saw, this is Jim here, when I originally saw the teaser, I didn't know anything about it other than there was a whole lot of outrage, and I felt a bit of it too when I saw it. Rather than, what's the term, virtue signal about it, like a lot of people did, and one could argue that that's what I did by saying that I ordered a Netflix account, even though I didn't say it was because of Dear White People. He said, I decided to dive deeper and found that it was an extended version of a 2014 film by the same name and nothing about the 2016 MTV video by the same name. I legally acquired a copy of the movie and was laughing when it was over. Not because I found the movie funny, though there was a funny part or two, which, yes, there was, but because the backlash was so ignorant and myopic. I found it funny that these other people didn't even take the time to do a 5-second DuckDuckGo search. It's funny how he wrote this, to even see if their outrage was justified. The story was not what the teaser portrayed at all. I wasn't fully on board with the main character's decision, no spoilers, to solve the problem she saw, but there was a lot of good to take away from it, and there was a lot of stuff these people freaking out would actually enjoy and agree with. Even what happened to the main character and who helped her in her journey was something I think they would actually be very happy about. I really recommend it to people, especially people who are upset by the teaser. I was wondering, did you see the movie? What were your thoughts? Was this good or bad marketing on the part of Netflix? If you haven't seen it, what do you or did you expect this to be? Keep up the good work. Love the show, and meaning Sovereign Tech. And the Patreon stuff is even better. Worms, Jim Jesus, and worms to you, Jim. Worms, of course, famous saying from the Fiends. So anyway. Okay, so to answer those questions, I agree with a lot of Jim's assessment here. I didn't feel the outrage because, if people want to make this shit, go ahead. It really doesn't matter to me. It's kind of like if you go on Amazon, okay, if you look in the Kindle store on Amazon, you will find, and this is, kind of credit to Amazon, and I've talked about this briefly before in the past, kind of credit to Amazon, they will pretty much let anything get published in the Kindle store. Anything. And I'm not just talking about, Taken by the T-Rex, like this dinosaur porn, where these dinosaurs are literally raping human women. Okay? I'm not even just talking, just the craziest, Nazi books, new Nazi books, written by people that like to be called Nazis. Okay, I'm not laying out some kind of colloquialism on them. Okay, that's what they want to identify as. They consider them, they're right up there with George Lincoln Rockwell and About White Power, which I've read that book, by the way. Woo! Have you? But anyway, it's amazing what they'll allow for on there. Do I? Okay, actually, I kind of do recommend boycotting Amazon if you can, but not for those reasons. And I understand why people, sometimes why they can't. There's something to be said for this is how you get shit in the world, okay? But it has to do more with my concern of them becoming a monopsony. It has nothing to do with they allow to be sold on their website. I don't care. Make that shit. I don't have to buy it. So even if I were offended by, the racial issues, which I'm not, it doesn't do much for me. And I understand. I can empathize with some people why it does kind of bother them, because they feel like there's this big double standard. I get that. Okay, I may disagree with you, but I get that. Don't think I'm yelling at you about that or anything, because I'm not. Because in fact, especially Jim, I know he's a good guy. So anyway, my thoughts on the movie overall, I thought it was a pretty good film. It's an odd movie. It kind of comes off in skits. Yes, there is a cohesive narrative, but it's sort of a disjointed film. It's not great. It's good. It's really, but again, really not great. Sort of the main character, Sam. She's kind of an anarchist. Sort of in the end, it doesn't necessarily work out that way, but a lot of her attitudes and platitudes are definitely, it's replete with anarchism in my opinion. So, I'm not, that's kind of cool. It's sort of all this very much, against the establishment and everything, which I think a lot of people could really enjoy that message if they did, like Jim said, and Jim's spot on, in saying, did people actually even watch the movie? No, they didn't. Or if they did, they had their oppressing white people blinders on or something. I don't know what the hell was going on. So, yeah, there's, I don't know. The movie overall, again, good, not great. It didn't really, so the trailer, if you watch the trailer for Netflix, it makes it look like this is it makes it look like that double standard where, oh, this black woman has a radio show on campus, which the campus is called Winchester University. It's a fictional campus, based upon, as far as I understand it, the Justin Simeons, the guy that, or Simeons, I don't know how I want to pronounce that. Simeons could be an insult. But Chapman University, he went to that, and he said it's not really like based, but more influenced by Chapman University that he went to. So it's not like this is necessarily a true story, overall. But yeah, so in the trailer it makes it look like, oh, she gets to make fun of white people, but as soon as white people are having some kind of party where they're putting on blackface, where they're making the party is everybody needs to dress like a black person, then it's wrong. And so, like, oh, there's this terrible double standard here, and they're making fun of white people, blah, 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 blah. Which, the story, I mean, that kind of happens, but there's so much more nuance to that. There really, really is. That, I don't know, but I mean, it has messages. I agree with Jim. It kind of has messages that are interesting. Like the idea of, when you're going through personal advancement, because Winchester University is like this Ivy League school. Should you consider the community? When you do that sort of thing. Should you care about what your family wants? Because there's the battles that Troy goes through in the movie, right? Should you care about what your family wants, or should you just do what you want to do? Right, because Troy wants to, or his parents want him to be a lawyer, but he wants to be like a comedian or something, and there's a lot of this personal interplay, which is very interesting, and there's a lot of this kind of coming of age stuff, and then of course there's the violent fight at the end, but yeah, the trailer shows nothing of what the movie is, or at least the movie that I saw was all about. What the show's going to end up being, well, we'll see. There's no real need for the show to even exist. I mean, granted. Like, why? The movie was fine. I guess maybe the show could be better because then it wouldn't feel so disjointed like I described, where it's more skit-like. Like, the show could actually explore each one of those segments within the film and do one as each episode there. So how about the marketing as far as this goes? With Netflix. Frankly, yeah, it was probably good marketing, and I could imagine that there's people at Netflix that would just like to, that have bought very much into this narrative, that Donald Trump is representative of white nationalism, and that they wanted to, kind of get in people's faces about that. I could totally see that they would do that. Is that good marketing? Depends on, your definition of good marketing. Did it get people talking about it? Absolutely. It absolutely did. And now here's where we can get in a little bit deeper, okay? And that is that it seems like there's always groups, and honestly, it's not just like white nationalists or alt-right people or whatever that do this. There's other, minority groups that would end up doing this. So you have, say, like when Star Wars Episode 1 came out. Okay, well, here, let me back up, or let me go forward. Star Wars Rogue One was... apparently, according to some news sources, was being boycotted, banned, and, generally complained about by the alt-right because they felt like it was feminist propaganda because the lead character was Jyn Erso, okay? That happened. How many people actually felt that way? Who knows? Because you can make anything. You can't get any sense of reality from Twitter. You just can't. Like, one person can have 10 million Twitter accounts. And they could make it seem like that there's 10 million people. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but they can make it seem like there's 10 million people that are in an uproar over this feminist propaganda piece known as Star Wars Rogue One. So you don't know really how many people are doing this, right? How many people are mad about it. And this speaks to my point that we talked about recently, not in this past week's episode, but the previous week's episode of Sovereign Tech, Internet Self-Defense was the title of it, where I said, look, we got to be super diligent to know really, okay, how many people are really feeling this way? What is the reality around any of these stories, even the simplest ones? Now, back when I remember when Episode 1 came out of Star Wars, this would have been 1999. The internet wasn't the news juggernaut that it is today, but in 1999, there were, I think it was the NAACP, there were a few other groups that thought that the character of Jar Jar Binks was racist, that it was a stereotype and that it was terribly offensive. And yeah, Jar Jar talked with a kind of a ridiculous Jamaican accent and all this, and did that come off as insulting? I don't think Jar Jar was racist. I think Jar Jar is insulting for a whole bunch of reasons, but it is not because of any sort of racism, in my opinion. And I mean, and there's so much, to kind of stand by that. I mean, yeah, and you have to understand too that in the realm of science fiction. In fact, I saw the most recent case of this is in probably the best show on television right now, which is The Expanse. There is a character who is a belter in The Expanse that, I'm not giving any spoilers away, don't worry. There is a character that is white. Again, it's a belter though, so like there's a whole different level of kind of racism going on here, and that's part of the narrative of the show, is that the people from Earth hate the belters and are trying to kill off all the belters. The belters are people that live in the asteroid belts and the outer parts of the solar system. But he's a belter, but he uses something that sounds very much like a Jamaican accent. Now, there's white people in Jamaica. There's Jews in Jamaica. I mean, there are. Okay, but he uses that accent. But why does he do that? And what I think is interesting is not that it's some kind of like, cultural appropriation or some kind of racism. And the character comes off not as dumb, but is kind of like not so very well thought out. But again, it's played by a white actor. I think what's interesting about that is that accent comes off, and what I think it says is that, look, these are people who are on the outskirts, on the islands of the solar system. Okay, and so it has a use that you can relate to on Earth itself, on modern day Earth. So I don't find it, necessarily to be insulting in that. With, in Star Wars, I mean, I don't agree that Jar Jar was like a racist character. I mean, it was a terrible character for a bunch of reasons. And yeah, I mean, maybe there's a touch of stereotypes in it. But really, like what a lot of this comes down to is, and here's the hard part. Here's where it's tough to tell what is actually going on. Say with Rogue One, say with Episode 1 of Star Wars, or say with Dear White People, is that how much of it is, say, the alt-right trying to get some free press, and the press loving to latch onto this because they know it's outrage porn, and people are going to flip out, when they see that, oh, the alt-right is, these white nationalists are claiming it's racist, and we get to peg them as a bunch of racists and all this stuff, right, when they do it. Or is it, could it be that Netflix actually generated the entire outrage? And saying, oh, we're going to cancel our Netflix accounts because it'll get people to buy onto Netflix. I mean, it got me to buy into it, but not because I love Netflix. I hate Netflix. It got me to buy into it on a more personal level because I had, frankly, some people that... I mean, I'm playing totally honest and straight with you. I had some people that, frankly, I wanted to piss off. So, and this goes true, again, this is true for Rogue One, for Episode 1, like there's no such thing as bad press, right? That's a very old saying. I'm worried you people are going to think I'm some kind of shallow guy. 99% of the time, I'm not at all. But I am not beneath, really, I am not beneath just wanting to like piss off one person. but anyway, so, well, I'll go into more because it kind of goes beyond that. Yeah, it's tough to tell who's actually marketing who. Like, who is it just this? Is it this group? Is it the certain subculture that's trying to get some press, and so they say, oh, we're going to ban this, blah 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 blah. Or I mean, it's hard to tell today. Everything seems like marketing, right? It's so crazy. So Netflix is going to win on this. Like, frankly, I don't even think there's that many alt-right. I mean, not to say that there aren't alt-right people out there. There are white nationalists out there. Absolutely there are. And is their number growing to some degree? Yeah, I think evidence points in that direction. And I'm just saying it points in that direction. I'm not saying that it's a certainty. But, Netflix is going to do fine. The numbers that they're going to gain in people just, buying into or, getting a subscription just to see the show or to like perhaps support the show is going to far outweigh the amount of people that are canceling because of it, in my opinion. I mean, really, they are not going to get hurt from this at all. So it's good. It's if you attribute good marketing in dollar signs, then this was good marketing on Netflix's part. The whole thing. Now that said, I mean, certainly I have concerns over racism and things like this. I think racism is still absolutely a thing. Yeah, I kind of enjoy it when white nationalists get pissed off. Like, good, because I think these people are just insane. And you got to understand, look, and I never thought, and I'm being really open with you guys. Like, I never thought. I'm ethnically Jewish. I really never thought that like Nazism and white nationalism and things like this would actually be a thing again. I never thought. And yeah, I mean, in New Hampshire, am I seeing it? No, not really. In other parts of the world, I mean, like in a lot of rural areas and stuff like this, are you seeing it? Yeah, probably not really. But I am not unconvinced that it's not in like cities and some other parts of the world or some other parts of the country of the United States, and elsewhere. I mean, I have fairly strong evidence that it is. And even in just some of the most basic social media interactions with, not on Twitter, but like say on other social media, like there are people who are really coming out and saying, and I'm not just talking about like the crazy dumbass quasi-libertarian mouthpieces either. I'm talking about straight up people who come right out and say, no, I think the Nazis were onto something. I can't believe I live in a world where people think that way. Are they just trolling? Oh, maybe. But then what's funny about that? Like I'm absolutely baffled. On what's funny about that. I mean, like me wanting to piss somebody off by ordering, by supporting Dear White People. Okay, which, by the way, again, the movie had some very, like Jim Jesus said, the movie had some very redeeming qualities and some very, positives to take away from it. It's actually not terrible content at all. Okay, so I don't mind supporting it in the first place. I would have paid, to go to see the movie in theaters back when it came out. So I would have put my money down, regardless. Okay, this isn't, just about wanting to piss off white nationalists or something, right? It does go beyond that. I think I was making it sound like it was just that, but it does go quite a bit beyond that. It's an interesting thing. I was half tempted to talk about this on Sovereign Tech, but I guess I'll just talk about it here. And I hope everybody is listening all the way through this so that you get what's going on. Now, you want to talk about something that might be marketing of some kind. PewDiePie, the YouTube sensation, he's been a YouTube sensation for 5-6 years, however long he's been doing it. Now this person's a quote unquote grown man. He has been apparently he's been taken off of YouTube. This guy is, look, I don't get it in the first place, and that's fine. Maybe it's a generational thing or something, or you got to grow up with them to understand it. Whatever, I don't get it. But what happened recently was that he made kind of effectively like a bet with a couple of other YouTubers from another country to hold up a sign, and I'm being very basic in my description of how this works. Actually, he hired them through Fiverr, but I guess they knew how to do YouTube, and they went ahead and they did it. So Fiverr, of course, is a site where you pay people $5 or something. So these guys, to hold up a sign wherever they, in the country that they were, wherever they were, because Fiverr is usually people, honestly, in other parts of the world. And he said, I think these guys were from India. It's like, hold up a sign that says "Death to all Jews." And they did it. So, and now PewDiePie lost a contract with Disney, and now lost his show on YouTube apparently over the outrage of it and all that. And PewDiePie says, trying to defend himself, he comes out and says, look, I didn't think they would actually do it. I mean, that's his exact words. Is he said, I didn't think they would do it. And the Indian guys apologized, and they said, we didn't know what the message meant when we were making the video. We had no understanding of it. And it's like, okay, so, but like, here's the thing, is that, so PewDiePie is kind of a comedian, right? And like, what, yeah, okay, so maybe this is going to be great for PewDiePie. This is going to give him some kind of whole new audience. Maybe he's looking to get into Milo's shtick, all right, whatever. But like, really, what's so goddamn funny about that? In the first place, that he thought that was okay. Like, this is supposed to be like some kind of sketch thing that he's doing. Where's the joke? I'm lost. So, I'm kind of baffled like that this is even like a thing anymore, I'm not saying PewDiePie is a white nationalist. I'm sure he's quite the opposite. Okay. But I don't understand where this kind of comedy like is considered, very humorous. Okay. And then, for people to turn around and say, look, you got to get over this racism thing. Racism's over. Are you kidding me? There's people who think it's funny to hold up a sign. This is death to all Jews. How am I supposed to exactly get over that? I mean, I'm not afraid of anything. Not really. But look, if there's a little Jewish kid wearing a fucking kippah, walking around or something, and he sees that, I mean, how dare you? And it's so funny too, because I get asked. Speaking about being asked to be on podcasts, I get asked to be on podcasts. Because I have some sympathy for some of these social issues and all this stuff, and I get told, oh, you're crazy. Oh, this doesn't happen. Oh, stop. Oh, blah blah blah. This isn't a problem. The government favors minorities. Blah 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 blah. Okay, fuck the government. I'm scared of the culture. But look, I'm not blaming white people. I'm not, necessarily in the abstract. I'm not doing anything like that, and this is not new for anybody who's listened to Sovereign Tech. But look, racism is still a fucking thing. It's still something that needs to be discussed. It's still something that, that has to get hashed out. Do I want to be in a world where everything's, post-racial? Fuck yeah, of course I do. But where we are right now, we still got people who thinks it's goddamn funny to hold up a sign that says death to all Jews. Or people that get nuts because, oh shit, somebody made a show about black people. Like, I mean, where's your better part of valor? Let's say I bought into you the way you think, okay? Now, and I don't mean you, the patrons. I think you're all very empathetic people, okay? But, the average person, let's say I bought, or, maybe the average white person or something, where they're like, oh, well, if I made fun of black people, I would go to jail, or I would get beat up, or something like this. But if black people make fun of white people, oh, it's all totally fine and dandy. Why the fuck do you want to make fun of them in the first place? Have the better part of valor. That argument doesn't make any sense at all. Yeah, I don't get it. I really don't get it. I mean, the problem is that like a lot of this stuff is kind of been, in many ways it's institutionalized and it needs to be fucking addressed. Okay? Is getting everybody, is getting, everybody on board with anarchism and all that, is that the way to get to a post-racial world? Sure. I mean, depending, I suppose, to some degree on the brand of anarchism. I don't know about Hoppe, but fine. Then keep educating about it, okay? But let's be aware that as much as government is a problem, there is a culture out there that has some pretty fucked up ideas about how the world is or how things should be or what's funny. If you want to ignore it, ignore it. That's okay. But then fucking ignore it. Ignore it when Dear White People comes out. Ignore it when all this other stuff comes out. Have the better part of valor if you're really all about ignoring it. Ooh. Anyway, maybe I'll lose some patrons over this one. But yeah, I'm just telling you. I think that yeah, there's this concept, and I'm not the only one. Jeffrey Tucker, lots of other very intelligent people have have really said, look, yeah, this white nationalism is becoming a thing, and a lot of it's getting outcropped from the liberty movement and all this, and some of what Trump's doing is very scary stuff. I'm not the only one saying this. You've got a whole lot of other people you're going to need to get out of your life that you may agree with 99% of the way, that have a much bigger voice than I do, that you better start blocking and banning. It's a thing. I mean, is the media, are they overblowing it? Is the numbers perhaps skewed? Because, again, you can on Twitter, you can make one person look like 10 million people. Maybe. That's entirely possible, but we better do the due diligence on that fact and look into that. So anyway, I think it's going to end up being a really good show. I'm not saying I agree 100% with everything, that like a lot of the ideas, kind of like Jim Jesus said, with what gets laid out in it. Okay. But, I think it could be very entertaining and rock and roll. Do it. I mean, I've had problems. Look, I'm not, just to lay it out here, like I take issue with some of the things that happens like in Hollywood, where I think that at the sake of the art and for the sake of, say, quote unquote, racial inclusion or something like that, that sacrifices are made for an art form. For example, I've complained about this for years. I've complained about, the fact like that in Justice League, in the Justice League cartoon, almost every time in the original cartoon in like Justice League Unlimited, they never use Hal Jordan as, now they do, now in the movies they do, and that's great. But they never use Hal Jordan as the Green Lantern. They always use, what's his name, Jim Stewart or whatever. They always use the black guy. And I don't have a problem with that character. I think that's fine. But just let's be clear, when I want to see Green Lantern in action, just because of it's not racism, I just want to see the Green Lantern that's been the Green Lantern for the past 40 years. I want to see Hal Jordan rock this shit out. But why isn't Hal Jordan in there? I mean, like, it doesn't make sense unless it's because, they want to put in some kind of diversity. Now, that's fine. They can do that, but understand that me as a viewer, I take issue with that. I don't ban Cartoon Network because of it. Besides, still get to see Batman and Wonder Woman, so hey. Yeah, let's just reality check, folks. And I'm glad Jim Jesus did the homework and said, "Wait, actually, wait a second. What the hell is everybody getting up in arms about?" And yeah, it's all marketing somewhere here or there. It's all just crazy. But there's people in my various social circles that should be smarter. Should be smart like Jim Jesus was in doing the research and saying, "Oh, whoa, wait a second. What am I getting all flustered about?" And honestly, like at the end of the day, it's a good thing because, or it's not a good thing. That's not what I mean to say. It's an interesting thing because like we talked about in that episode of Sovereign Tech, Internet Self-Defense, okay, where, if you want to make sure that you are as close to 100% certain of what you are putting out there on social media, okay, as far as the reality of the situation and all this, okay, that way when another group say tries to attack you or someone else tries to attack you, with what you're saying, you have the solid facts. Because if they can prove you wrong, then you and perhaps the ideals that you may think that you're, promoting, could be severely injured by that, right? So the nice thing is that the alt-right is dead wrong about what they think even dear white people is. And not that they have any, they don't have any intellectual consistency whatsoever, and they don't. And even people that are sympathetic to the alt-right will tell you they have no intellectual consistency. Okay, but at least you get to, the egg ends up on their face when they make things, when they get up in arms over a show like Dear White People, and obviously they have no idea what the fuck it's about, like Jim Jesus said. Praise Jesus. So, but folks, I mean, please understand that racism is absolutely still a real thing. Yes, I want to get to the world where it is not, but it is. And I'm not making any kind of pragmatist argument here. I am just saying that understand that these people have experiences, okay, that are traumatic and that are real and that may be systemic and cultural, and that, try and hear people when these things go on. And are they going to be reactionary at times? Are they going to go and make a show like Dear White People? Is, what was his name? John Simeon? Is he going to make his movie about his experience at university or influenced by his experience in university and all that stuff? Sure. But instead of you getting insulted and saying, oh, they're trying to take down white people, maybe try to listen. What is he talking about? And don't just write it off. Because people outside of you, guess what? They have feelings too. And telling people to suck it up doesn't help shit either. Listening to people, empathizing with people, that solves problems. Ignoring it or, bottling it up doesn't solve a goddamn thing. That's how you end up in all kinds of problems. So anyway, this one went a little long. I'm of half a mind to edit some of what I said just because I think people are going to misconstrue what I had to say. But I hope I just, in the end there, I made my point very clear. So anyway, got a great episode of Sex and Science Hour coming out this week. I am actually going to be doing in the following week. I will be releasing another entry in our comic book Top 8, which people have absolutely been loving. So I'll be getting that out there, and just a lot of exciting stuff going on. And of course, I have an absolutely dynamite episode of Sovereign Tech lined up for this week. So a lot of content coming your way. Thank you so much for being a patron, and for listening to my rants every week. Anyway, enough of that. I'll see you on the other side, everybody.
You just experienced Sovereign Tech. Go to sovereigntech.com, that's SOVRYN tech.com, and connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovereign Tech is copy heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.